Right. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that you might not expect,
Oh,
and that is cross-dressing
interesting.
among heterosexual men.
Okay.
Um, and, we've got some excerpts from this article,
Hmm.
and it's called The Power of Crossdressing, a Transformative Experience for Heterosexual Men.
Wow.
And, it's not just about the clothes.
Right.
This article really dives into
Mm.
some thought-provoking ideas about identity, self-expression,
Right.
and even relationships.
It's fascinating how this article really challenges a lot
Mhm.
of the assumptions we have about cross-dressing.
Right.
Often people jump to conclusions about sexuality or fetishes,
Oh, yeah.
but this piece digs into the personal growth
Yeah.
and the self-discovery aspects.
Yeah, and they even question, like, the whole idea of clothes
No.
being inherently masculine or feminine.
Yeah.
There's this quote here that really struck me.
Oh, really?
Why are floral patterns deemed acceptable on a man's tie, but taboo on his trousers?
It does.
It makes you think.
It makes you think about all that stuff that we just take for granted.
Right.
Like these rigid gender roles that we have.
Right.
It argues that those can actually be limiting,
Ah.
preventing men from fully expressing their emotions
Yeah.
and exploring all these different facets of themselves.
Yeah, so it's almost like
Yeah.
cross-dressing becomes an act of rebellion in a way
In a way, yeah.
against those constraints.
Yeah, for some men, it can be a way to push back against those expectations and embrace a more authentic version of themselves.
Right. But it's not always an easy journey, is it?
No, it's not.
The article acknowledges the stigma
Absolutely.
that surrounds cross-dressing, especially for heterosexual men.
Huge hurdle.
Yeah.
The article doesn't shy away from that at all.
Right.
It talks about fear of judgment,
Oh, yeah.
ridicule,
Mm-hmm.
losing relationships,
Yeah.
professional consequences.
That's heavy stuff.
It is.
Does the article offer any insights into how men navigate that?
It does.
Okay.
It talks about the importance of support networks,
Okay.
both online and offline.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions these thriving online communities
Interesting.
where men who cross-dress
Yeah.
can connect, share experiences,
Yeah.
offer each other encouragement and advice.
You'd like a safe space.
Yeah, and it emphasizes open communication with partners and loved ones.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Having that support system in place can make a huge difference,
Huge.
especially when you're dealing with something that can be so personal
Right.
and potentially isolating.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding acceptance.
Right.
It's about building resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The article argues that confronting that stigma, even in small ways,
Right.
can be a powerful act of self-affirmation.
It's like saying, this is a part of who I am,
Exactly.
and I'm not going to let societal pressures
Yeah.
dictate how I express myself.
Precisely.
Mm.
And that defiance, that willingness to be true to oneself,
Mm-hmm.
can lead to incredible personal growth and empowerment.
We've talked about societal pressures, the stigma, the need for support,
Yeah.
but the article also seems to celebrate
Yes.
the more joyful, creative aspects of cross-dressing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a whole section dedicated to the sheer fun and creativity. It talks about the meticulous process of choosing outfits,
Wow.
experimenting with makeup, and even crafting entire personas.
Interesting.
Yeah, it compares it to stepping into a new world.
Wow.
World where you can explore different sides of yourself
Yeah.
and express your creativity in a way you might not have felt comfortable doing before.
It's interesting how that ties into this idea of confidence building,
Mm-hmm.
which the article also touches on.
It does.
I wouldn't have immediately connected those two things,
Yeah.
but it makes sense when you think about it.
There's real vulnerability involved
Yeah.
in putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
embracing something that might be outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
And that vulnerability,
Mm.
that willingness to take a risk and express yourself authentically
Right.
can be incredibly empowering. It builds confidence and self-acceptance.
So it's not just about the external transformation, it's
Yeah.
about the internal transformation as well.
Exactly. And that internal transformation,
Yeah.
that journey of self-discovery,
Mhm.
is really at the heart of this article.
Okay.
It argues that cross-dressing can be a profound way
Yeah.
for heterosexual men to explore their identities
Uh-huh.
and challenge preconceived notions about gender and expression.
That's a really interesting point.
It is.
We've talked about challenging societal norms, confronting stigma,
Mm-hmm.
embracing creativity, and building confidence.
Yes.
So it sounds like there's a lot more to this
There is
than meets the eye.
a lot more.
Oh, wow.
What we've covered so far is really just scratching the surface.
Okay.
The article goes on to explore how this journey of self-discovery
Yeah.
through cross-dressing can impact relationships in surprising and often positive ways.
Interesting.
but we'll delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
You know, one of the most surprising things I found in this article is how cross-dressing can actually foster empathy, particularly towards women.
Empathy.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, the article argues that when a man steps into the shoes,
Right.
or maybe more accurately, the clothing of a woman,
Okay.
he starts to experience the world from a different perspective. It can be a real eye-opener in terms of understanding the societal pressures and expectations that women face.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like gaining a firsthand understanding of what it's like to walk through the world as a woman with all the judgments and assumptions that come with it.
The article gives this example of men who, after experiencing the discomfort of high heels or restrictive clothing, develop a newfound appreciation for the physical challenges women often navigate. It also talks about how cross-dressing can make men more aware of the subtle and not so subtle ways in which women are treated differently in social situations.
I could see how that kind of firsthand experience could lead to a deeper understanding and ultimately more empathy towards women.
That's a great point. And the article goes on to suggest that this increased empathy can lead to more meaningful and fulfilling relationships with women.
So it sounds like cross-dressing can have some pretty profound ripple effects. Extending beyond the individual and impacting their relationships with others as well.
It really can. And speaking of impacts, the article also delves into the therapeutic potential of cross-dressing. For some men, it can be a form of stress relief, a way to escape the pressures of their everyday lives and embrace a different identity, even if it's just temporary.
There's something almost liberating about that.
It is.
It's like shedding the weight of expectations. And allowing yourself to just be, even if that being is someone different than who you are in your everyday life.
That's exactly the feeling the article describes. It talks about how cross-dressing can be a way to tap into emotions that men might otherwise suppress due to societal conditioning. It's like giving yourself permission to be vulnerable, to explore the full range of your emotions without judgment.
You know, this whole conversation makes me think about those classic stories of superheroes who put on masks and capes to transform into someone else, someone more powerful or fearless. But here, it's not about becoming a superhero. It's about becoming, well, maybe a truer version of yourself.
That's a brilliant analogy. The article makes a similar point, arguing that the act of putting on a different persona, even through clothing, can help men connect with aspects of themselves that they might not feel comfortable expressing in their everyday lives. It's like shedding a skin that no longer fits and stepping into one that feels more authentic.
So it's almost counterintuitive.
It is.
You'd think putting on a costume would create more distance between you and your true self. But in this case, it seems like it can actually bring you closer.
That's the paradox. The article highlights how that act of vulnerability, that willingness to embrace those hidden parts of yourself can be incredibly empowering and ultimately lead to greater self-acceptance.
This deep dive has really changed how I think about cross-dressing. I thought it was all about appearances, but this article shows that there's so much more to it.
It definitely challenges a lot of the common assumptions we have cross-dressing, especially for straight men. It often gets, reduced to a caricature. But what we've been talking about is self-expression and personal growth, and even challenging those gender roles we just accept without question.
Yeah, one of the things that really stuck with me was how the article talked about how cross-dressing could help foster empathy, especially toward women. It's not just about understanding the idea, but really experiencing it firsthand.
Right, that's where the real learning happens. The article had those great examples like men trying to wear high heels and realizing how uncomfortable it is, or noticing how people treat them differently when they present as female. It's that firsthand experience that can lead to real empathy and hopefully to more equal relationships between men and women.
If this conversation has made you curious, we encourage you to keep learning. There's so much information out there, both online and in your local communities. And remember, the most important thing is to be open-minded and compassionate as you explore this and any other path of self-discovery.